Hello everyone. So welcome to our study abroad podcast series. Today we have Aashmika Varma who will be sharing her study abroad journey with us. So welcome Aashmika.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So we'll get to our questions which we have prepared for you, and you can just answer them according to your experience. So the very first question we have for you is, what was your initial motivation to come to Singapore? Like, what was the initial decision making process that happened, and how the execution happened?
I was planning for my colleges back in 12th summer, and I was looking at my options, and mainly I was focusing on India and Singapore. Singapore as a country, like I don't know, it just popped up and it just felt right for some reason. Um, I started putting my energy and effort into Singapore when my mom said that she'd rather have me in Singapore than in Delhi. So I think that kind of like affected me, and I was like, okay, if that's the case, then I think might as well just like start focusing most of my time and energy on Singapore. I think most of my preparation was online. Like I didn't reach out to any career counselor. All of the information that you need for Singapore universities is already online. So I just sat down one day and I looked at all the options. I looked at the colleges that exist. I noted down whatever details that I might need to look at again, and then I made a document out of it. And based on that, I basically applied for every university that I wanted to apply. So I applied to NUS, NTU, SMU, SIM. I wanted to apply to Kaplan University, but the link said that it's applying to Kaplan University, Australia. So I don't know, it just didn't feel right. So I didn't apply to Kaplan. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, okay, sure, sure. And when you applied for all these 4 5 colleges, what was the how did you select that you should apply to these colleges, and because there are probably more than that in Singapore, how did you come up with this list of 4 5 colleges?
So if I'm not wrong, there was a website called Study Abroad or like shiksha.com or something. And through that, I found out that these colleges even exist. So I knew about NUS and NTU before itself. SMU, I didn't know about, but I got to know about it through websites. And then I looked at it further. I looked at their website and I was quite impressed with SMU. SIM also, it was just through like Google search. NUS and NTU, I was actually not even going to apply because I know that it's a highly reputed university, and I was underestimating myself, and I was like, I don't think I should even apply. I don't think I'd get in. But then later again, I watched videos and I realized that I think it's worth the shot at least. So that's when I finally decided that okay, I'll apply to NUS, NTU, SMU, SIM, and yeah, those were the final universities I applied to.
And you were clear about your subject, the course you wanted to take, that was like very clear from your 11th 12th, or you decided it later?
I actually in 11th grade I had chosen commerce because my brother also did it, and everyone told me that oh, like commerce has more opportunities and stuff like that. But I think towards the first week of my school, like before school started, I realized that I don't really see myself doing this subject. So I actually changed my subject to humanities right before school started. So I had psychology, legal studies, economics, English, and political science. So these were the subjects I did. I really enjoyed psychology the most out of all the subjects. And I also kind of saw myself doing this subject in the future. So I was very clear that whatever I'm doing in the future, it has to be with psychology. And it also kind of comes with the fact that I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And psychology is a very broad subject. So it can kind of be applied to any industry. So that's why I wanted to play it safe and use my strengths into the subject. So that's why I chose psychology.
Okay, sure, sure. So you are right now studying at SMU, so you got how many offers were you able to have out of these applications?
So I applied to Korea University apart from the Singapore universities. I didn't apply to any other Indian university, which in retrospect, I probably should have had at least some more options. But because I was that serious on going to Singapore, I didn't apply. Korea is one of the new and upcoming liberal art universities in India. So I applied there and I got in. I was going to apply to Flame and Ashoka as well and Christ, but as I already mentioned that my mom preferred me staying in Singapore, I didn't apply. And like deep down, I also didn't want the confusion in my head that like, what if I studied in this college? So I wanted to keep my options limited and also like put in my 100%. NUS never got back to me, so I don't know if I actually got into that college. NU, no, NTU, they rejected me, but I kind of saw that coming because my board marks came out really late because of the whole COVID thing and everything. So because of the delay, they literally emailed before my results came itself that it's good that you look at other options because we only focus on grades. So I had a feeling that this might happen. SMU, they gave me, I mean, they called me for the interview, then they gave me a conditional offer, then it got confirmed. SIM also I got in, but I was more focused on SMU.
Sure. And after your offer was given to you, you decided, let's say you'll go to SMU, right? So
Hmm.
what was the next steps involved?
So in SMU, there's this thing called matriculation. So they give you an email saying that you need to do certain steps. So it's just admin stuff. There's a medical test, there is the whole student pass process. So I did do all of them one by one. I came to Singapore on 7th July 2022, and my first semester started on 15th August 2022. So when I came to Singapore, I had ample amount of time to like get all these admin things out of the way because it actually is a lot of work. And thankfully, I actually came on dependent visa to Singapore first because my dad works in Singapore too. So it just happened to be that he got a job offer in Singapore. It was very coincidental. So that's how my parents ended up shifting with me, and my experience as an international student is kind of different from the usual international students. But yeah, so I think being on dependent pass actually kind of helped me get my student pass faster because I just had to convert it. I already got the pass essentially. So yes, I think that definitely speeded up the process. And if anyone is coming to Singapore, I would definitely recommend them to come at least like 2 weeks in advance because I think even finding accommodations can take time.
Sure, sure. And how was your transition from India to Singapore? What were the very first few things you were shocked about or were pleasantly surprised like that?
Um, I think, yeah, definitely there are a lot of cultural shocks because I hadn't been to Singapore before coming to uni. There was actually a trip from school planned to like look at other colleges and universities, but because of COVID, all of that got cancelled, so I never got to like go for the trip. But I actually also went to Singapore when I was really young, so I had no idea where I was going to, like zero idea. Just all my knowledge was based off YouTube. Um, when I did come here, there were a lot of cultural shocks, like, how in the escalator, like everyone sticks towards the left, and then people who are in a rush, they go to the right side. That was one of the cultural shocks. And then, like, a lot of small, small cultural shocks here and there as well. Like, in my first time, I almost made friends with people who wanted to convert my religion. And that was like literally my first experience of friendships in SMU. So yeah, I've had like very interesting experiences, but I think that's a part and parcel of living abroad. And I think you just have to have an open mindset and like also be careful at the same time, which I think I could have been more careful. I was like, yeah, everything it's okay, it's very safe. Um, Another cultural shock. Yeah, I think like this was the main cultural shock, but I think just settling in another country can take some time. Like my first year was quite hard. There were a lot of things to deal with, and even the education system compared to India, I found it to be more competitive. But I mean, obviously, there's JEE and NEET and stuff in India, which makes the environment in India also just as competitive. But I think because in Singapore, everyone is very focused and like it really comes to your face. So I think the competition here is a little more. But yeah, at the end of the day, it depends on how you take it.
What about the food? Were you anything you were shocked or any pleasant surprises?
So I'm an eggetarian, like I have dairy and eggs. And vegetarian food, of course. Here, I found it really weird how on the menu they say that food is vegetarian, but they just mean that it has veggies in it as well. So that was one issue. In general, I also feel that there are very less vegetarian options. So like you really need to walk around to get vegetarian options if you're eating outside. Most of the times I try to cook home or like my mom cooks at home, so it works out quite okay. Um, One thing I would definitely say is that if you're vegan, it's going to be really hard because my friend who is from Germany, she was a vegan, but then later she like started to relax her eating habits a bit because it's hard to be a vegan in Singapore. And I think for a lot of cases, like wherever I go, sometimes whenever a restaurant does not have any vegetarian options, I just end up ordering egg fried rice. So again, if you're a vegetarian and you don't eat eggs, then I think you should at least start eating eggs because that might help. But yeah, for strict gens and strict vegetarians, it can be a hard place to be in.
What about the accent differences? Did you face any accent understanding problem?
Oh, it was, yeah. So actually, when I first came to Singapore, I was like, I'm going to vlog out all of my experiences and I'm going to become a full-time university vlogger. But the first day of my university, which was on 15th August, Independence Day, that's why I remember it. I had calculus in the morning at 8:15 a.m. and my teacher was Chinese. So I didn't understand anything he said. Anyways, I don't like math. So my experience from the first day itself was like quite shocking because I didn't understand what he said. I don't like math. I don't understand what happened in class. And then I just went back home thinking like, wow, this is how my 4 years are going to be. I don't know if I'll be able to manage it. Then the next day I had sociology and my prof was Japanese. And thankfully, I enjoyed the class. I understood what he said. Then I had psychology, and psychology was also amazing. So I think, yeah, some accents are definitely hard to decipher, but over time, you really get better at it. Like, I can actually like really understand Singlish even on text now. So it comes with practice, I guess. Singlish also like hardcore Singlish accents can be hard to understand even after experience, at least for me. So yeah, I think it just you get used to it at some point.
Did you like ask around that what did he say? What did he say? Like he or she said, like a translator kind of thing, or was it like you just ignored it that okay, fine, whatever I understood, whatever I didn't understand, let it be.
I think you just understand slowly. Like even in class, like sometimes I'm not really sure what happened, but then I think you get the context of it eventually. But the main issue I faced with Singlish is on text because people use Singlish a lot on text. And that's when like a lot of miscommunication happens. So I was in this organizing committee for one of my CCAs, and I don't know why people used to keep saying ICMI. And I know Singaporeans are very efficient with the way they speak. So I assume that, okay, they're saying I coming, because CMI, right? But turns out CMI means the complete opposite. It means cannot make it. So all the times they were saying CMI, they actually said I cannot make it instead of I'm coming. So yeah, I think that was like a huge issue, like in terms of understanding Singlish. But yeah, rest of the words, I think it's quite okay. Nothing like
What
this.
about can la?
Yo, I
Cannot
love
la?
can. I think can just is such an easy word to use here that I end up using it in whenever I go back home also.
The education you mentioned that there was a bit of a difference, India versus Singapore. So how
Hmm.
was your experience in terms of, let's say, a class in India versus a class in Singapore, or like along with your peers, like what do they say? Like, how do you put some differences and some similarities?
One thing I really, really miss, like so much, is having class clowns. And I think India, I was so used to having like at least, backbenchers and those guys in the back who are like constantly laughing or like joking around and making the environment just like a lot lighter. I miss that a lot. And I forgot that Indian universities have that. I thought like university may all of this ends, but in SMU in Singapore, all of this does end because like, it's a strict society and no one's as like easygoing. So I definitely miss that. Um, I really like it here how students are actually allowed to eat in class. I mean, some profs say that they don't want students to be eating, but you can have finger foods. So I was really shocked to see that because in India, that's like a strict no. Like, if you want to drink water, also, you need to ask your teacher for permission. So that's something I really appreciate here. And most of our learning here is online, which is good in its own way, bad in its own way, because it's good as in like you can, make notes, you can search up stuff in class, so you can use it to your favor. But at the same time, it gets so tiring because by the end of the day, I'm just so tired. I don't feel like seeing the screen. And that's also why I haven't been able to, be in touch with my friends in India because my screen time just increased because I'm just studying. And in India, I used to write notes with my notebook and like handwritten notes, but in university that's just a huge waste of time. So I think that's a general university thing, not necessarily Singapore. So using laptops or like using an iPad to make notes. So I think these were like some differences in education and just learning.
What about the class size? Like in India, usually in schools, you have like 50 students or so. What was the ratio like there?
So in the school that I was in, Akia, I mean in Bangalore. So my school's name is Akia, and it just happened to be that my school founder is an SMU alumni. So that was also one of the reasons why I was more attracted to SMU. And SMU has this culture of having a very small class size of like 30 to 40 max. And Akia also has the same principle, the school that I studied in. And so even in that school, I had like 25 to 30 people. But I know, I've had friends in like DPS and all of that. They have like sections till G and students like 40 to 50 per class. So yeah, I think definitely having a small class size does make a big difference. Because even in Bangalore, I was able to like you know, figure out myself and just build my own personality. And even in university, it's a huge, huge perk because compared to NUS and NTU, you can't really talk to your profs easily. But in SMU, you can actually book consultations with them. You can really talk to them. You can ask them questions during class, which NUS and NTU don't have.
What about the attendance policy? Is there anything like that?
Yes, there is an attendance policy. SMU is very strict about this thing called class participation. So a lot of these courses have a percentage which is graded by class participation. And class participation includes how much you talk in class, if you asked a question, if you participate in discussions, and even attendance. So attendance is graded. And I think if you are absent for like more than 3 classes without a valid reason, you can get a C, and it really affects your overall grade. And there are like cases where like if you don't attend for like a week of classes or something, your student pass can get suspended. So they're quite strict.
Sure, sure, sure. And what about the class duration? Like each period or each subject is similar to India or is it different?
It's actually, this is also one thing I don't really like about SMU. Each class is 3 hours long. So it's really long. And like, I think towards the end, like everyone kind of zones out. And even psychologically speaking, no one has that long of an attention span. And some profs forget to give the break on time. So yeah, I think that's a bit of an issue. So classes are divided from like 8:15 to 11:30. Then the next class is 12 to 3:15, then 3:30 to 6:45. And then we also have night classes. So night classes are usually 7 to 10 p.m. So the the way SMU works is that you have to bid for your own courses. Like no one assigns you courses like the way in India, like you just get the classes assigned to you and then you just go to class. Here you can decide for yourself. So some students who want to intern part-time throughout their semester, what they do is they arrange their schedule in such a way that all of their classes are maybe on Monday and Tuesday, and then the rest of the days they are, just interning. Or some students just take night classes and they do something else throughout the day. So it's flexible, again, perks of its own, but also cons of its own.
What about the diversity in the class, like people from different countries, different cultures? What kind of diversity do you see in your class?
I think compared to Bangalore or like India at least, there is a lot of diversity that you see. You get exchange students from Europe, you have a lot of Southeast Asia exposure. For me, most of my classes, because anyway, social science doesn't have that many Indians right now, though it's definitely increasing. Like, um, from my batch, I was the only one from Bangalore. The batch after me, I think there are like three Bangaloreans, and the batch that's coming in right now, like incoming freshmen, I think they're like three, four plus. So I can see it increasing. But for most of my classes, I'm the only Indian, which anyways doesn't really matter to me. I'm quite comfortable with other cultures. I mean, I think there's definitely like Singapore, there's Malaysia, there's Vietnam, there's um, Indonesia, Philippines. So I say that majority is definitely Southeast Asia. But if you hang out more with exchange students who stay for like maybe just one semester, then yeah, you can get connections through European countries as well.
So you said, you don't have many Indians in your class. So do you see it as a positive or do you see it as a negative, or you fluctuate in between the two?
I think mixed feelings. Like in my first semester, I had this subject called Southeast Asia Past and Present, and I was the only Indian in that class. And that's when I really wish that, I wasn't the only Indian in class because we were essentially studying history of all these countries. And it was really hard for me as an Indian who, anyways, does not like studying history that much to read in depth of each Southeast Asian country and write about it. Because the course was in such a way that you can choose the country you want to write about. And obviously, if you're from that Southeast Asian country, you can easily write about your own country and like the prof can't really say anything because like they know you're from that country and like you probably have that experience. So, as someone who wasn't a part of Southeast Asia, it was definitely a little harder to like adjust. But sometimes it also works in your favor. Like, I know some of my friends who've like used the excuse of like, oh, I have Indian function, Indian family event to go to. And no one can object you because there's no other Indian to like relate to what you're saying. So, yeah, that's what
Okay.
I would say.
So Bangalore versus Singapore, the weather adjustment, how was this weather thingy that you adjusted to, or what is the difference?
Before I shifted, whoever I knew who was already in Singapore, that's the only thing they would say. Like, Ashmika, you would really love Singapore, but you'll really miss the weather from Bangalore. And I was like, okay, I mean, it can't be that bad. When I first came here, I will agree, it was so humid. Like, I would wake up sweating, and I've never felt that before, like, even with the fan on. So, for first 2, 3 days, I was just feeling really uneasy. But then later, like, you get used to it. And I have been to Nagpur, I've been to Delhi. These countries, I mean, not countries, what am I saying? These cities are incredibly hot. Like, you can't step outside for like more than, I don't know, 30 minutes. So, I have dealt with that level of heat, and Singapore compares nothing to that. Singapore is definitely much manageable. And actually, I think it's quite pleasant now that I've kind of adjusted to it because it rains here quite a lot. And Bangalore also, it rains quite a lot. So I do see that similarity. It's very, very pleasant if you look at it that way.
Sure. So from the career point of view or your hobbies, let's say, you are making some vlogs every now and then. So how was your this vlog thing happened? Like when was the first time you decided that, okay, let me try something, and then every now and then when you make, like, what's your motivation about it, and what do you see the future of it?
Hmm. So this happened very accidentally or like just out of the box during the lockdown because my uke teacher or uke mentor, ukulele mentor, like the instrument that looks like a guitar. So I started like focusing more on the ukulele because during online classes, my uke was just there and I would keep strumming it. And I realized I was getting better at it and I'd been playing a lot more. So my uke teacher said that, I think you should like start a page for this. I was quite hesitant at first because I didn't like the idea of like making a public profile. But then there was one day where I was like, I keep talking about this. My friends keep asking me about like tutorials and whatnot. So then one day I impulsively just made an account. I felt very weird that I even made it. Then slowly it started like really growing. And then I saw that, okay, I think there's some potential here. And I started posting the same thing on YouTube. And I think eventually, like I think when the whole transition to Singapore kind of formalized, I really wanted to be the kind of person who vlogs out, my university experience and stuff, because I didn't have that when I was applying to Singapore, and I felt that there is a gap in this kind of content. So that's when I was like, okay, I want to fill this in. So literally the first thing that I could create was my first experience in SMU. So I vlogged that out to even like remember how I was feeling when I first entered SMU. So that was my first video. Then the second video was my experience studying in Singapore, because that's also a lot of question I had been receiving. And currently, I am working on my next video, which is about like my application experience. So yeah, I just need to sit down and like just record it at this point. And hopefully I keep creating these videos. I don't see myself doing this full time. But if I do, then sure. I just enjoy creating content, and it just happens to be so that people find it helpful. So yeah, I think it goes both ways. I see it as a side hustle I'm worth continuing.
So you learned that you're enjoying this content creation after you created the content, I guess. That's what you mean?
I guess, yeah. I didn't realize that I would enjoy shooting videos, editing them, and all of that just kind of happened out of nowhere.
It's like a self-discovery that, you did this, then you
Mhm.
liked it, and now you're continuing it. So actually, it's a good thing for your potential juniors, you can say.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned that, I didn't have this opportunity or this kind of information, so I made it kind of for
Mhm.
your juniors that, okay, fine, if you're coming here, you can actually have a look at these videos and you can get some information at least. Sure.
Yeah.
So, what's your future goal as such? Like, where do you see yourself in 5, 10 years? Anything you have visualized? Anything
So,
in your mind?
Um, SMU and like I think NUS and NTU, like public universities have this thing where you have to work in Singapore for 3 years after graduation. If you sign for the tuition grant, that is. And I did end up signing it when I came to Singapore, and that kind of confirms that I will have to work here for 3 years after my graduation. Again, if I get a job. So, assuming that I get a job, I will probably stay here for the next 6 years. 2 more years of SMU, then 3 years working here. After that, I guess it really depends. Like, if I enjoy working here, if I enjoy the way things are going, then I might, apply for PR and see how things go. Otherwise, I might just go back, and I would have zero issues with that because I've always wanted to do something for Bangalore. So if that really works out, I'll be more than happy. I don't know if I'll end up pursuing psychology, and that's exactly why I decided to do a double major in marketing. SMU has this option of doing double majors. Uh, and I feel like double majors are a great way of like, boosting your brand as a person and even learning more through the course. So it double degree and double major is different. And double major is essentially where you're doing your free electives as one subject. So yeah, I'm planning to pursue or at least explore psychology, marketing, sales, like job roles like these. If it works out, it works out. And if I feel like doing masters later and I really want to pursue psychology, then I might do clinical psychology eventually. So yes, not sure, but I have my plans and options open.
So, you probably had an option of 6 years bond also, or only 3 years bond?
I've not heard of the 6 year bond thing, but I think there was only the option of 3 years.
Okay, I guess it's specific cases it might be offered because in
Mhm.
6 years what happens is then you get 100% scholarship with some
Yeah.
monthly allowances also. Yeah, but I think it would be specific student specific cases. Not everyone would get that. Yeah, but it's
Mhm.
good you got the 3 years. So actually, uh, there is a positive to it also that most the companies might actually prefer you and government might also help you get a job or some preference, etc., because they want you to actually stay for 3 years at least.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that does happen because my seniors have told me that SMU gives out this email or something uh, when you are on the tuition grant. So that kind of helps employers also like favor you over students who haven't taken tuition grant. And SMU's brand itself also really helps. Like SMU's had higher employment rates and higher employment outcomes compared to NUS and NTU for 6 consecutive years. And this came on the news like twice. So
Yeah, yeah, sure. And it's also for the employer, they know that you are here for 3 years at least.
yeah,
You will not run away
that's
just
true.
like that. So it's a retention, hidden retention motive for them, kind
Yeah,
of
but
it.
the other issue is that recently, Ministry of Manpower, they recently updated the employment pass system. So earlier, you can get an employment pass sponsored if your initial starting salary is $5,000 per month. And I think in a few months it's gonna change to $6,000, which is honestly a very, very hard thing to secure because anyways, 5,000 is not easy for a starting salary. 6,000 is a lot more, and some industries don't even pay that much as a starting salary. So employment pass sponsorship will be hard. But I mean, the other option is doing S pass, which is the same visa with fewer benefits, and your income would be like lesser than that.
Usually, employment pass, you can bring your spouse and all, but which is not the case for you. So you can even start with S pass. Or other thing is actually what from my limited knowledge, the employment pass, considers your CTC kind of, not the in-hand salary as such. So
Hmm.
the total salary might be, let's say, 6,000, but in your hand, you are getting a bit lesser because of some deductions, etc. Anyway, that you will know with time, and maybe in 2 years it's revised again, or maybe they make an exception for the people who are on some kind of bond, etc. So that's
Hmm.
was there. You are also doing internship right now. How is this your first internship? How did you land up with this internship?
So yes, this is my first internship. I'm currently interning at MediaCorp as a content strategy and analytics intern. I got this through SMU. So there's this club called S Marketing, and we had a company visit. So I visited the company, and they had a presentation, and I made notes of like what they were looking for. And eventually, like the organizing committee sent the email ID that we can reach out to for internships. So I directly emailed the contact, and she emailed it to other like sub branches and sub brands in MediaCorp. And then my current supervisor reached out to me, I had an interview with her, then another colleague of hers, then HR reached out to me after a week. So that's how I got this internship.
And what is the duration of, like, what's the internship culture of SMU? How they allow like 3 months, 4 months, 2 months? How does it work?
So SMU has a graduation requirement of completing one internship at least for 12 weeks. So I managed to get this internship approved by SMU. So this is a credit bearing internship. Summers are from, I mean, it's 4 months. So they give a long summer for you to intern, which actually is a great thing because compared to Indian colleges, you barely get holidays. And the fact that, it's so spaced out, you can actually explore industries, you can do so much. So that's how long my internship is. I do know that some people take an LOA, which is a leave of absence, and then they intern for 6 months. And some people prefer that because, you really get to invest your time and energy in the company, and then you can create more connections, create a bigger impact. But I personally don't see that as valuable. And so do some other international students, because that really affects your graduation and the whole timeline. And if you take two leave of absences, then again, there's some issues that you'll have to deal with your student pass.
Yeah, sure, sure, sure. Yeah, I think Singapore follows, that very international version of semesters. January to April, then like May to August is like the summer vacation, and September to December is again another term, another semester, like that. 4 months each. So the mid 4 months is like a summer job internship. Names
Mm.
can be different in different places. So I think in India also some colleges do follow, like IITs do follow that. Most engineering colleges also follow this, again, January to April and things like that. But a lot of colleges don't follow it, and I completely agree. And we are also disappointed at times that if you get like the students get like 1 or 2 months off, that too in not a very consistent way, how will we hire them, and how
Mm.
what can we offer them actually? Otherwise, it's like too much of a chaos actually to hire people from different colleges. So there should be some kind of uniformity probably that can help the Indian students also, maybe.
That's true. So, my brother studied in IIM Rohtak, and
Mhm.
he also dealt with like, these issues of like really less holidays. But I mean, he also had to do an internship, so like that worked out. But I think in general, I've seen a lot of my Indian friends like, barely having holidays, just rushing into classes. So yeah, I'm quite grateful that SMU even has this. And even during the semester, I feel like, compared to Indian universities, I have a lot more time because first of all, I can arrange my own schedule. And a lot of us in SMU, we just have one class per day because it's 3 hours long. So if you have just, 3 hours into your college, then you can do a lot more with the other time. And we have recess week, we have study week, which is basically an entire week for you to do your own thing. So yeah, it's the timeline, the flexibility, it's really nice.
And all the companies are actually in Singapore only. So it's a 30 by 30 island which has all the offices, and that too in a very small maybe areas,
Mm.
CBD area or something. So you can pretty much sit for one interview every day if you want physically.
Yeah.
So that's not possible in many places in India actually. So that's one another advantage of Singapore. Okay, Ashmika, thank you very much for your time. So we'll end our podcast now. So thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you for having me and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're interested.
Sure, sure. Everyone, please do subscribe to her YouTube channel. I'll put in the description box.